In math today, we're going to continue learning about graphs and data. Today, we're going to do a math lesson on Seesaw. So please join me on Seesaw. Please click on Activities, Assign to Class folder, Blue Math. Our task today is called interpreting a line plot. A line plot is another type of graph that we're going to look at today. Go ahead and click on our task. Click Add Response to open our task. And stay on slide number 1. Looking for friends who are focused on math instruction today, ready to learn as much as they can. The first thing we're going to do in math lesson today is we're going to start with a video about line plots for kids. So I'm going to push start on the video and you are looking and listening to the video. If you're just joining us, thank you. Join our math Zoom and headphones are plugged in, listening to our What is a line plot for kids?
Good grammar and spelling are important. Welcome to Kids Academy.
Hello, boys and girls. This is Teacher Michael. Today, I'd like to talk to you about line plots. Well, what is a line plot? A line plot is a quick and easy way to display and organize information. Let's take a closer look at a line plot so that way we can easily identify or see what is a line plot and what's not a line plot. So, in our example, we have some animals. We also see the heights of each of the animals. Now, I'm guessing these are stuffed animals because the heights are kind of small. So I see one animal, the panda is 33 centimeters.
I'm done with YouTube.
We're going to start that video over. Make sure everybody's listening and focusing on what is a line plot. Here we go.
Welcome to Kids Academy.
Hello, boys and girls. This is Teacher Michael. And today, I'd like to talk to you about line plots. Well, what is a line plot? A line plot is a quick and easy way to display and organize information.
That's me.
Let's take a closer look at a line plot so that way we can easily identify or see what is a line plot and what's not a line plot. So, in our example, we have some animals. We also see the heights of each of the animals. Now, I'm guessing these are stuffed animals because the heights are kind of small. So I see one animal, the panda is 33 centimeters, and other animals are 30, 29. I see another animal that's 30. So if we look at our line plot, and the line plot is this section of information right here with X's and numbers, we'll see all of the heights of the animals listed at the bottom. We'll also see some X's right above. You know, those X's represent, each X represents one animal. So I know that by looking at this line plot, there's one animal that is 29 centimeters tall. And that is true, because if you look at the animals, you can see that the mouse is 29 centimeters tall. If you look at the line plot, you'll also see that there are 3 animals that are 30 centimeters tall. Those animals are 1, 2, and 3. Those 3 animals are represented by these 3 X's. So I hope you can begin to see that a line plot is really just a nice, easy way to organize information.
So in this example, we have a data set. Data is information. So look at the top. Here is a collection of animals and their lengths, how long these animals are. We're still waiting on a couple friends to focus. That means your eyes, ears, and brain are listening to instruction. Means your mouth is not making sounds and your body is not moving. Your body is not moving and your voice is not on. In this data set, we have animals and their lengths. So I noticed that there are 3 animals that are 30 centimeters long. So on the line plot, it's represented by putting an X for each animal. 1, 2, 3. 3 animals have a length of 30 centimeters. Let's do a different example. I noticed there are 2 animals that are 32 centimeters long. So if we look at 32 on the graph, we should see 2 X's. 1, 2. Notice that this scale is 1. Each X represents 1 animal. Most of the time on a line plot, the X's equal 1. If it says differently, you will see the scale like we've been talking about. Let's go ahead and go to our Seesaw task. Join me on Seesaw, looking at your task. We're going to start on slide number 1 together. Everybody should be on slide number 1, ready to work together. It says, with your teacher. A craft store asked some people how many scarves they owned. So this is what our data is about. I notice a title called Scarves. Here is an example of a line plot. I see some categories down here. 0 scarves, 1 scarves, 2 scarves, 3 scarves, or 4 scarves. Today we're going to practice reading a line plot by answering a question. Let's look at our first question that goes with this graph. How many people have at least 1 scarf? So I need to start with 1, and I'm going to count how many people have 1 scarf. Notice our question says at least 1 scarf. That means if you have 2 scarves, we can also count you. If you have 3 scarves, we can also count you. So I want you right now to look at number 1 and start counting up. How many X's are there represented on this graph? How many X's are there that are greater than 1? Look right now at the graph. All right, who has an idea about how many people have at least 1 scarf? Using the data, looking for 3rd graders who can share out. How many people on the graph have 1 or more scarves? Honesty, go ahead.
8 people.
So Honesty says there are 8 people that have 1 or more scarves. Let's check that. Let's check her math. So let's count how many people have 1 scarf. 1 scarf. There are 3 people who have 1. 3 X's. So 3 plus. Now let's count how many people have 2 scarves. Count how many people have 2 scarves according to the data. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 3 plus 8. We've counted 1 and 2 so far. Let's go to 3 scarves. How many people have 3 scarves according to the data? I count 1, 2, 3, 4. So plus 4. Our question says how many people have at least 1? So some people have 4 scarves. Let's count them. How many people have 4 scarves? Look at your data. Maberly, go ahead. Great job. Let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I'm glad we checked. Glad we checked. So plus 10 more. All together, how many people have one or more scarves? Find your sum. When you have the sum, I want you to fill it into our space. Go ahead and do that now. Sum. 3 people have 1 scarf. 8 people have 2 scarves. 4 people have 3 scarves, and 10 people have 10 scarves. So how many people have at least 1 scarf? I see 3 hands that are ready to share out the sum. Thank you so much. Haley, go ahead, Haley.
Okay. My sum I got was 25.
Excellent. 25 people have at least 1 scarf. So each X equals 1 because we do not see a key that tells us something different. Let's go ahead and move to slide number 2. Join me on slide number 2. This is a different line plot. I notice our title is different. It's not about scarves anymore. It says drawing a card between 4 and 9. You know those cards with numbers on them and shapes? People play card games.
Yeah.
So we're talking about something like that. People who are drawing a card and the number is either 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Okay, so let's look at our data. Do we see a scale anywhere on the graph that says X is equal to something? I do not see that. That means X is equal to 1. If you do not see it, this is what it means. If it doesn't say X is equal to 1, that's something you can always tell yourself. Okay, so let's look at our graph. Now let's look at our question. How many people drew a number less than 8? So I'm looking at less than 8. Those are some clue words. So first I'm going to start with 8 and see how many people drew 8 when they drew a card. Then my question says how many people drew less than 8. So I don't need to count 8. I need to think about what's less than 8. So even though my question says 8, I'm going to think about 7 and less than 8. Let's count to see how many people drew a 7, a 6, a 5, or a 4. Do that right now. How many people drew a card less than 8? Fill it into the blank and be ready to share. How many people drew a card less than 8? Looking at your data to read the graph and analyze the graph. Maberly.
4.
So let's look at starting at these X's. We're going to count all of the X's because each X equals 1 person. Okay, so we're going to count all the X's that are less than 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 people that drew a card less than 8. So one person drew a card that was a 7 because there's 1 X over 7. I should not be hearing other voices on. 2 people drew cards that were number 4 because there's 2 X's above 4. So we want to count all of them that are less than 8, and that is 10 people. 10 people drew a card less than 8. Let's go ahead to slide number 3, please, and work together on slide number 3. All right, I'm going to be calling on some students to help me analyze this data. Be ready in case I call your name. Be ready to share out. Here we go. The art teacher wrote down how many flower pots each child planted last week. So our data is all about how many flower pots were planted or painted, I'm sorry. How many flower pots were painted? I notice our title is also about that topic, painting flower pots. I want you to take 1 minute and look at this graph. Look at this line plot. My first question, how many children painted 2 flower pots? How many children painted 2 flower pots? I want you to put the answer in your head after reading the graph. So how many children planted 2 flower pots? So we go to 2. And each X equals 1. So 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, 4 children, 5 children painted 2 flower pots. The X's represent the people. Okay. All right. Be ready in case I call on you. Here we go. My next question is, how many children painted 1 flower pot? How many children painted 1 flower pot? Let's call on Landon.
0.
Correct. Landon is looking at the 1 on the graph and he sees that there are 0 X's. So 0 children painted only
You know it's a hard question.
Our next question, let's do together. Our question at the bottom says, how many children painted exactly 3 flower pots? How many children painted 3 flower pots? Look at your data. Find the 3 and count the X's. The X's are equal to 1 child. Whoops. I see a hand ready to share. Miss Gloria, go ahead.
9.
Say it again, Gloria.
9.
Thank you. It's hard for me to hear when other people are making sounds. We've already talked about this, so I will be taking recess time. There are 9 children who planted 3 pots. We can go ahead and record that into our answer. Nine children painted 3 flower pots. Excellent work. Let's go to slide number 4. Slide number 4 is a little bit different. I do see a graph, but I also see a frequency chart. Look on the left side. This is an example of a frequency chart. So let's take a minute to read to figure out what are these graphs talking about. Okay, I see some information at the top. It says Fred figured out the scores at the end of a card game. In your mind, you're thinking about a card game and people counting score. It says use the data in the tally chart to complete the line plot below. All right, let's look at the title of the frequency chart. Scores in a card game. Scores in a card game. Okay, so let's see. The score is 4, the number of people over here. So what this frequency chart means is 4 people earned a score of 4 at the end of the game. Number of people is over here, keeping track. So 3 people earned a score of 6. This is how we're reading this chart. People are on this side. So let's ask some questions about our frequency chart. Let's see if we can figure this out. How many people scored 10 points at the end of the game? How many people scored 10 points? Who can look at the people side and figure that out? Ashley, go ahead.
They scored.
How many people scored 10? 10 points, how many people?
9.
9, right? 9 people scored 10. Good. How many people scored 7 points? Who can answer that? How many people scored 7 points at the end of the game? Mercedes. Nice job. Mercedes says 8 people scored 7. Perfect. So what we have here is somebody took this frequency chart after they figured out how many people scored at the end of the game. They took it and they made a graph. That's the whole point of using graphs. We can use data we collect and then show it on a graph. So let's go ahead and finish this graph. I notice X's are placed on the line plot except for 4. Except for 4. 4 is not done. They're kind of grayed out for us. So let's finish it. Look at our frequency chart at the score of 4. At the end of the game, how many people scored 4 points? Our chart tells us that 4 people scored 4. So going over to the graph, we need to put 4 X's to represent those 4 people. So you can use your marker tool if you want to, like me. We're going to say one person scored 4. Another person scored 4. And now I have finished the graph for slide number 4. 4 people scored 4, so we have 4 X's to represent the data. Great job. That was a little bit of a tricky job because we haven't talked about making graphs yet. Great job hanging with me and practicing something new. All right, let's go ahead and skip slide number 5, please. Put an X on slide number 5. Go ahead to slide number 6 and put an X on slide number 6. I'm not going to have time for those today. And I want you to go ahead and click on slide number 8. Slide number 8 is your independent instructions. It says complete slides 9 through 15. Today, all of your graphs are line plots like we've been doing together, where you're going to count the X's to answer the question. Starting on slide number 9, I want you to think about the data in the frequency chart and then think about the graph. These are really important jobs that you can read the frequency table and think about the graph. I'm going to go ahead and give you some time to start now. I will stay on Zoom for about 8 more minutes. Your independent time starts now. You may begin on slide number 9. All right, looks like we have wrapped up a lot of our problems. Great job focusing your attention on math.
Yes.
When you get finished with your task today,
You just asked me to.
when you get finished with your task today, you may turn in with the green check. And then this afternoon, your work time is to continue practicing on Zern. On Zern, there are a lot of really good graphing questions. So if you are new to Zern, I will show you what Zern looks like on our page. This afternoon, your math time can be practicing on Zern. Zern is on Clever with the brain. If you need help getting signed into Zern, I can help you do that. Just send me a message on Clever and I will get back to you. So go ahead and turn in your work when you're done. Great job. I'll be on at 12:45 if you have any questions today about your task or about Zern.